right, welcome back, Sports Talker Nation. Once again, it's your host, the G-Man, as we continue with our 2016 team-by-team NFL preview. Today, we're going to talk about those New Orleans Saints. Rough year last year for all those in New Orleans, and I expect it to continue. I am not either a fan or a believer in those New Orleans Saints. I think Sean Payton is a good offensive coach, and I think he maximized the talents of guys like Breeze and a cattle of a wide receiver. However, they just have never addressed their defensive problems. They had the dumber of the two Ryan brothers as their coach. It just hasn't worked out. He was terrible. Their corners were absolutely terrible from a passing perspective. The Buccaneers, San Diego, these teams just got thrown all over the place. I don't see that getting any better. On offense, I've also never been a huge believer in Drew Brees. I'm glad he won a title for the city, especially after Katrina. But I think he is a stat whore. So if you're a fantasy guy, that's great. But from a straight football perspective, I don't think he has a strong enough arm. I think teams have figured out what he likes to do to compensate for that not-so-strong arm. And not a huge believer. I still think he's a top half of the league starter. But I also think age is catching up to him, and Father Time is still undefeated. So I don't love Breeze. I don't love their passing game. I do like Brandon Cooks. He's quick. He's fast. He's more of a slot guy to me. Their offensive line is improved, and I think that's one of those things that Sean Payton does well. He puts them in position to succeed, so I have a lot of faith in their offensive line. Mark Ingram is good when he plays. You can count on him for 10 games a year, I guess, maybe 12 if you get lucky. I'm not a huge believer in him. They lost their big tight end a couple years ago in Jimmy Graham, but they managed to replace him now this year. After Ben Watson put in a career last year, they've replaced him with Kobe Fleener. So I think that should help somewhat. But offensively is not going to be their problem. It's defensively. They don't get a pass rush. Their linebackers are athletic. They have Kenny Vaccaro in the defensive backfield, but that's about it. I expect these guys to give up 28 to 30 points a game. Without that pass rush, those corners are just on an island for too long a period of time. And they're just not super talented to begin with, so all that time is going to lead to a lot of big plays against them. So I'm just not a believer in New Orleans this year. As I mentioned, they had a down year last year. I'm calling for another down year. Let's say that they wind up in that 5-11 space. And I know that is a precipitous drop from grace for a really good coach like Peyton and a historically good quarterback like Breeze, but I just don't see it in their future. I think it's tough to assume they're going to rise from that without any substantive changes to their defense. So that's where I see them winding up, especially in a division like that with Carolina and an upcomer like Tampa Bay. There's nowhere to go for New Orleans for me to go except for down. So with your 2016 team-by-team preview of the New Orleans Saints, I'm your host, the G-Man, and I am out.